this idea that we can go through schooling and in the process we can learn and we can adjust our modes of thinking, we can better understand different contexts and concepts and slowly kind of evolve into different people to a certain extent. So to that end, I do think there is an element of behavior change that we're naturally going through every day and our society supports. But as it relates to the organization, I think there is this essential element of we did one thing one way yesterday and now we're going to do something a completely different way, and you're either going to hop on board with the new way or we're going to agree to disagree and in the process part ways. I think that is, and you touched on it earlier, that really is a critical stage that organizations go through, that we have to flush out the behaviors of the old. We're no longer doing it that way because it didn't work. So now we have to find a new way to do things. And that's jarring. That's jarring.
Can you share a story? Because I know you shared a story about Annie and Marilyn who actually changed the behavior of the people.
Yeah, well, I think Annie Shabazian at Loyola Marymount at their child care center, she came in at a time when the child care center was really struggling. There were some internal issues. The care of the children was not where it should be, and the organization wasn't operating as effectively as it should. So she spent a lot of time really on education, right? She really spent a lot of time just educating these employees and these professionals on how they could be better. And that ranged from very tactical, oriented presentations where guest speakers would come in and talk about best practices in daycare centers and child care and child development, things along these lines, all the way to very just day-to-day examples of maybe it's not best to listen to music on your iPad during the course of a workday. You know, just simple things. But at the same time, when you're in a culture that if you don't know any better and the previous culture supported those types of behaviors, like listening to your iPad, then maybe you just don't know. So just having someone point it out. The Marilyn Mercedes story is of a woman who owns a diner in Chester, New Jersey, in fact, and it's just an incredible story of not just her personal story of this woman who worked for 20 years as a waitress making around $2 an hour and just kind of kept going until eventually she winds up purchasing and owning a diner. But it's also just an incredible story of someone who's working to support a certain level of behavior. And she tells two stories of, it's pretty fascinating actually. A regular customer stopped coming in. And she noticed this, and over time it started to alarm her. So she knew where the customer worked. She went to his work. And in the process of going to his work, she teased it out of him that a few weekends prior, him and his wife had been served cold toast. And that was a concern of Marilyn. So her next stop was to go to the house of the waitress who served them, and then sit down with her and talk. What happened, what was the situation that played out, and after some discussion, Marilyn was able to impress upon the waitress that it's essential that those details are shorn up and those details are taken care of. They're served warm toast, if you will. But what's interesting is she put it in terms of the dollars and cents, right? Because that waitress was getting a $5 tip from this couple every Sunday, and that was just guaranteed $5 that was essentially stripped out of her earnings because of one, a little bit of a lapse of attention and detail. So, and she also talks about things she does to support her employees with Christmas gifts, and she tells a really interesting story of the cook who was essentially an inexperienced cook who had come with the restaurant when it was really failing and hadn't really proven himself, but it was a young individual, really needed a job, wanted a job, was dedicated to trying to learn his trade, had asked Marilyn if he could stay on. She asked, well, why would I keep you on? And he essentially said, I'm going to work hard. I'm going to give you everything I have. And in the process of her hearing his pitch, she not only agreed to keep him on, but she actually raised his salary, which I just think is an incredible testament to that concept of advancing loyalty to the concept of proving to people that you're going to get their back even though they may not have proven themselves yet. And that creates, at least in Marilyn's case, this pretty strong bond that has now kept this team together after a few years and proven successful.
One of the things I like about your book that you have told stories of some of the small businesses also in the book. I see that most of the business books out there giving example of Fortune 1000 companies, Fortune 500 companies, and small businesses sometimes cannot relate to those stories. So I think that's one of the reasons your book is going to be powerful and is going to be relevant for everybody, all businesses out there. I wanted to also find out from you about Kim's story from Bayer University, where you talked about now that you are teaching your team on how to change the behavior, you are modeling the behavior. How do you reinforce that? How do you make sure that it doesn't get lost?
Yeah, I think that in terms of two keywords that jump to mind as it relates to maintaining those values and the behavior and the culture, as you're talking about, really expectation and accountability. Those are the two words that jump to my mind. And you mentioned Kim Mulkey at Baylor and her women's basketball program, and that's something she's a genius at, right? Is this idea of establishing expectation and maintaining a system of accountability. And I think that when you can work that into your culture, then there's a benefit. And there's a long-term benefit in that it's explicit. What we're trying to do on the day-to-day is something that we all understand. And when we don't hit those marks, there is a sense of accountability and there's an ownership where people understand. And it's not about pointing fingers to say you're wrong or I'm right or anything along those lines. It's more about understanding where breakdowns occur and being able to shore them up, being able to fix them so they don't occur again.